and thus they have entered the big closed loop. And then all the services, including transport, accommodation, training, food and beverage, and also their participation in the games, and even in the opening and closing ceremonies or the medals awarding ceremonies, they are all in the closed loop.
在冬奥所涉及到各个的场所，各个就是需要行走的活动的一些路线，这都是我们所有的，我们是一个大的闭环。一个大的闭环呢，里边呢，它可能场馆算一个小的闭环，驻地算一个闭环，可能媒体采访区算一个闭环，到了延庆算一个闭环，张家口是一个闭环。这些闭环之间呢，通过我们的专用的交通工具。就闭环的交通工具来就是连接大家，就是可以到任何目的地的地方。
What I said just now is a general concept of the big closed loop on the whole, and actually we also have many smaller closed loops. For example, we need to move from different locations based on different flows of our activities. And so each venue may have a small closed loop, and also that's also true for every accommodation site. For the media coverage area, for example, for Yanqing it is a smaller closed loop, and for Zhangjiakou it is also a smaller closed loop. So between these smaller closed loops, people will shuttle on the designated transportation vehicles. So such designated transportation services connects all the smaller closed loops within the big closed loop.
在闭环，要进入闭环呢，不单是我们从境外来华参加比赛的运动员或者媒体或者其他利益相关方，也包括我们中国的运动员、官员进入闭环参加的。更多的是我们可能比境外来华人还更多的人员是我们的工作人员和服务保障人员，同样进入闭环，接受同样的一个闭环管理的措施。
So not only the games participants from overseas, for example, the athletes, team officials, the media, or the stakeholders will be subject to the closed loop management, but also the Chinese athletes, team officials, and staff will also be subject to such management. And actually, the workforce are greater in number. The workforce, the service support staff, they are greater in number, and they will all be subject to the closed loop management.
根据不同每个人的工作的任务或者他的工作的特点，所以他可以就是通过我们的注册的一些权限可以去到他可以去的任何的闭环内的目的地。同时呢，就是我们无论在场馆或者在驻地，都有一些就是划分的，就是固定的区域流向这个通道。实际上这并不是限制自由，实际上可以有些明显的标识，你可以通过这些标识就完全可以就是到达你需要达到的任何的地方。
So based on their accreditation rights, there are different roles they need to fulfill and the features of their work. The games participants can go to any destination within the closed loop, and actually for in every venue and every accommodation site we have dedicated areas, dedicated flows for the games participants. That is not to restrict their free move, but actually it is for the sake of COVID-19 prevention and control, and there are signages to guide them to any destination they may want to go.
在闭环里边呢，就是大家可能也是就有一种感觉，是不是就限制我的自由，或者是限制我的活动、我的工作？这方面我觉得不用担心，因为我们在闭环里边也提供了很多的便利的设施，包括我们的驻地，包括我们的场馆，各种特色的、不同价位的，各个国家口味的这种餐饮都会有，包括有些咖啡厅，包括一些健身设施。有货币兑换，有美容美发理发的等等这方面我们都提供，包括便利店 一些专卖店，我们都会有，所以给大家提供最大可能的提供这方面的一些服务。
And some people might see such a closed-loop management as a restriction on their free movement, and they may think that whether this will stand in the way of my activities or work. And actually, we can all rest assured because we will also provide many convenience and facilitation for the activities of the games participants. For example, in every venue and every accommodation site, there will be many special food and beverages maybe from different countries, to different countries' flavor and at different prices. And there will also be cafe, fitness centers, or health centers, and also grocery stores, hairdressers, currency conversion station, and many other such facilities to make the life more convenient for the games participants in a closed group.
在闭环里边呢，就是我们要求是每天都要进行健康监测，你比如说每天早晚要测体温，临异常情况要及时的报告。第二个，我们要每天都要检测核酸，这是因为我们入境的人员他是接种疫苗是免隔离的，大家知道，只要进入北京，只要你不那个普通的入境，他都要进行21天隔离。但是对我们特殊的12号人员，就是这种注册的人员，只要进入中国，他是打疫苗免隔离，所以这种情况就是风险还是很大的，所以我们每天要进行核酸检测。
And also in a closed loop, people need to track their health status every day. They need to have their temperature taken every morning and night, and they need to report if there is any anomaly, and they will need to take nucleic acid testing every day, because our policy is if the games participants are fully vaccinated, they can enter China and enter the closed loop without quarantine. And so for a normal traveler to China, they will have to be subject to a 21-day hard quarantine. But we have a special policy for the games participants, and if they are fully vaccinated, they don't have to be quarantined. So that actually involves a very big risk. So that's why people need to take the testing every day.
因为我本人是从事那个传染病的预防控制，我也做过临床医生。我特别的就是强调，就是尤其到北京的冬春季节，不单是对呼吸道的病毒，新冠病毒也是呼吸道病毒，还有可能其他的流感病毒。说到我想在这个闭环期间，正好是冬奥会期间，正好是中国的比较寒冷的季节，就是我们也希望进入闭环内的所有的参加奥运会的，无论是境外来华的，还是我们国内的人员，都应该就是严格的做好个人防护，包括尤其是口罩，保持社交距离，减少肢体方面的接触，等等，包括一些勤洗手、消毒等等一些措施。
And I myself have long been working in the field of contagious disease prevention and control, and I was also a doctor. So I know that because the Beijing 2022 Games coincides with a cold season in China, so that's a season that many respiratory diseases, including the COVID-19, including COVID-19 flu and other diseases, may be very rampant. So that's why we hope all games participants, whether they are from abroad or they are Chinese, they need to take strict measures for personal protection, such as mask wearing, social distancing, reducing contacts as much as possible, and other measures that they need to protect the health of themselves and others.
我想这些措施呢，除了能够防止自己被感染以外，另外一个就是 假如说我们在闭环里边出现了一个阳性核酸检测阳性的情况，你假如戴好 N95 的口罩，或者保持一定的社交距离，我们不会判定他为密切接触者，也会对大家是一个懂。
And such measures is also a very good protection on every individual themselves. For example, if there is any positive case tested in the closed loop, if the people around follow those protocols strictly and, for example, they properly wear masks, they will not be regarded as a close contact.
我想大家最关心的还是就是，尤其是我们在座的各位，在我们或者在北京，在国内工作的媒体没有经过境外来华这么一个过程。我想这个只要你是注册媒体，就按照就是中国的媒体一样，可以进入那个闭环。完了之后呢，假如说出闭环呢，大家可能更关心的是出了之后需不需要隔离，这是大家最关心的问题。这跟我们中国国内的工作人员、中国国内的媒体人，还有我们中国的那个参与奥运保证服务人员是一样的。他出来之后，会有一段时间的健康管理。当然，这种健康管理呢，根据我们的你所处的场所，是还有一个暴露的程度。假如说我在这个区域有阳性了，它暴露的程度可能就高一些，风险就高一些。所以根据风险评估和专家来决定，到底需不需要集中隔离，或者你有家的居家隔离，或者就是健康监测，这完全是靠风险评估和专家研判最后来决定。所以具体的说，我们隔离多少天，那我们要看具体的场景不一样，我们可能区分程度也不一样。
So I know many of you are very interested in the management after leaving the closed loop, because many of you don't have to travel from abroad to China, and so just like the Chinese media, just like the friends from the Chinese media outlets, you only have to, once you are accredited, you can directly enter the closed loop. Now, I know you are more interested in the process when you are out of the closed loop. So just like the Chinese workforce, Chinese media, and the Chinese support staff, once they leave the closed loop after the game, they will be subject to a certain period of health management. But such health management can be different based on different scenarios or conditions, and they will have to be assessed based on the location you were in, the extent of exposure to cases, and the associated risks. So, for example, if one was exposed to an environment with a positive case, so that may be with higher risks. So such decision will be made based on the risk assessment by the experts to decide whether one has to be quarantined at a designated place at their own home, or just they need to track their health every day for a certain period of time. So all these are different based on the different scenarios.
出了闭环以后有3种情况。第一个就是你愿意就是直接返回自己国内的，我们会提供就是48小时或者24小时的核酸检测阴性证明，通过我们闭环内的专门的交通，可以到机场直接就可以离开中国，这是一个方面。
There are mainly three types of ways to leave the closed loop. The first one is if you want to directly go back to your country after you leave the closed loop. The Chinese side or BOCOP will provide a negative result certificate of the nuclear test within 48 hours or 24 hours for you to leave China, and so you will be transferred directly to the airport by dedicated vehicles. That's the first scenario.
第二种情况呢，假如说愿意还留在中国继续工作的，也分为2种情况。第一个就是你在北京或张家口，没有家的，就是住酒店的，我们叫专门的酒店， 要集中隔离一段时间。具体时间刚才也是视情况，视疫情，让专家来进行判断到底多长时间。
So for the second approach, there are also two types. The first, so for the second approach, so if you are to continue to stay in China after the games, first, if you don't have a home in Beijing or Zhangjiakou and you just live in a hotel in Beijing or Zhangjiakou, you may have to be quarantined in the hotels for a certain period of time. But as to specifically how many days, it will have to be dependent on the situation.
假设你在北京张家口有自己的住所，这种情况呢，它可能就是就很短的一个集中的隔离观察，完了可以在自己有自己的居住场所进一步的进行居家的这种管理隔离等等这些措施，所以我们分情况是不一样的。
And if you have an accommodation place in Beijing or Zhangjiakou, you may just be subject to a very short period of time of quarantine in designated places, and after that you can go back to your home and just track your health on your own.
关于大家关心就是第三针，在我们的这次防疫手册里边呢，是没有专门提到第三针。当然了，我觉得就是现在我有关注，很多的国家参赛的运动员，包括教练员，就是很多都是主动打第三针。从那个医学，从那个疫苗接种的这种科学性来说呢，假如说我在半年前完成了2针或者就全程的疫苗接种，像这种情况，我们是建议就是打第三针，因为包括中国国内、北京，包括世界其他地方也都在加快推进第三针的这种疫苗注射。
And as for the booster jab or the third jab, there's no mention of this in the playbook, but actually many athletes and coaches, they took the initiative to receive the booster jab themselves. And so medical-wise, from the scientific point of view, it is suggested that if one is already fully vaccinated or get 2 jabs for 6 months, it will be very good for them to get a booster jab after half a year. So that's why in China, in Beijing, and many other parts of the world, the booster jab initiative is being rolled out very, very actively.
因为第三针疫苗现在已经被公认就是能够更强有力增强对个人的保护力，所以我想呢，就是只要是就是完成了很长时间的这些群体，我希望能够就是能接种第三针。当然，作为奥运会的话，不是一个限制条件我们只是建议和鼓励倡导大家能打第三针，不是作为一个强制性的要求。
And it is generally acknowledged that a booster jab will greatly enhance the protection on every individual. So that's why we suggest a booster jab. But it's a kind of encouragement, a kind of a suggestion, but not a hard requirement for taking part in the Beijing 2022 Games.
谢谢我们感看到大主讲。
好的，我有3点呢，可能我这个离麦克风比较近，所以就看老钟。不用，我说声音大一点我会补充3点。
I have 3 points to add.
其实刚才呢，这个黄先生说得很清楚，就是不管是从国外的还是驻京的记者，他进入闭环的3个必要条件。对方。
So just now, Mr. Huang Chun have made it very clear. So whether for journalists from overseas or the journalists already based in China, there are 3 prerequisites for them to enter the closed loop.
第一个条件就是说，首先你必须是注册记者。
First, you must be accredited.
因为你不是注册记者的话，你进到这个环内， 所有的奥运场馆，你没有这个证件 accreditation， 你是进不去的，也没有酒店说可以接待你这个，这是首要条件，就是证件 accreditation 是第一个。
So the first important prerequisite is accreditation, because if you are not accredited and you enter the closed loop, without the proper accreditation, you won't be able to access the venues and accommodation sites, and you will not even have access to the hotels.
所以呢，第二个呢，就是说在证件的基础上，你要2针疫苗，然后呢，如果你没法打疫苗，要进行21天隔离，然后再进来。不管是中国记者还是这个外国记者，新华社的记者也一样，而且我们的所有的员工也都一样，是一个条件，这里面没有差别。
And the second is that you need to get fully vaccinated, 2 jabs, or you have to be quarantined for 21 days. It is all the same. It equally applies to Chinese journalists. For example, for journalists in the Xinhua News Agency, they are also subject to this precondition. And it also applies to Chinese workforce. So it is a requirement for all. So that is the second requirement.
那么还有一点呢，就是可能大家会问，就是说，这个我进入闭环之后，我突然发现这个我还想回到城市层面出闭环去采访，那么这个呢，实际上是不管你是进了闭环1天，还是你完成整个奥运会采访，其实你要出闭环，都像刚才黄先生说的，要视3种情况而定。
So the third requirement is that once you enter the closed loop, and if you want to go outside of the loop for reporting or coverage, and whether you have been in the closed loop for 1 day or for the whole duration, once you want to leave the closed loop, you will have to be subject to certain management. So there was the 3 types of management Mr. Huang Cheng just said.
所以我在这里呢，就是跟大家建议，就是刚才我们为什么第3个问题问大家跟你们的这个体育部有怎么样的联系？如果你真想既有人采访赛事，又要有人采访社会，是吧？采访北京人怎么过年，那你最好把你的采访队伍呢分成2部分，是吧？一部分呢，就像你们最好就不进环了，就在环外待着。是吧？第二呢，就是那些从国外来的真正的体育记者，是吧？他们都是专业的体育记者，他们进环来跟踪赛事。
So we suggest that's why I asked you how you communicate with your sports desk, because we suggest that the friends from the media may be split into 2 kinds. So for you, for every media outlet, you can have a team for the coverage of the games, and have another team to for example, to interview the general public of Beijing, to for example, if you are interested in how they spend their spring festival, something like that. So you may split into 2 teams, and one team, particularly those sports journalists, professional sports journalists, they can enter the closed loop to follow the Beijing 2022 games. And for the other, maybe just like some of you can just stay outside the closed loop to coverage, to report and cover the social aspects of Beijing.
实际上，我再说一下，是刚才我们讲的闭环管理政策，这是在我们的系列的国际策略赛。我们现在已经完成了6项国际策略赛，现在还有一个国际训练周，还有国内策略赛。包括我们现在正在进行的一个国际训练周和一个国内策略赛。实际上，很多境外运动员从反应来说，他并没有觉得会限制他的自由，所以我觉得他比赛照样的进行得很顺利。所以我想呢，就是总体反应就是说我们的措施还是行之有效。虽然是可能从疫情防控角度严格一点，但是对每个的安全保障 是有很好的一个维护的。我想这方面就是安全是第一位。
So, based on our feedback from the 6 international test events and the International Training Week and also the domestic test events, the athletes and the relevant games participants, they don't see the closed loop as a big restriction on their free movement, and based on their feedback, they think it is very effective on the whole. So those measures may seem a little bit rigorous, but it is a very good protection on the health and safety of every individual. So safety and health comes first.
我想跟大家补充2点，关于这个闭环呢和媒体如何进入闭环的问题呢，刚才我们这个黄先生和徐先生给大家介绍的已经非常充分了。这里我想补充2点。第一呢，就是我们这个闭环是一个大的闭环，我们的这个场馆和签约酒店等等都是这个大闭环上的点，点与点之间呢是用专用的交通来进行联通的。在我们的场馆内部也分成闭环内的区域和闭环外的区域。闭环内的人员只能是在场馆的闭环内的区域。而这个闭环外呢，这也是属于这个是为了这个闭环外的人，这是一点，就是说我们是一个大的闭环，相应的场所都是这个闭环上的点，而在场馆每一个场馆内部，它也分了一个闭环区域和闭环外区域，但是这2方面进入的人员的这个流线都是严格不交叉的，主要是为了确保疫情防控安全，这是第一个。第二个呢，我们这个是实行的严格的闭环政策，是和社会面，中国国内的社会面是翻译。
Mr. Zhao has 2 points to add. First, just now Mr. Huang and Mr. Xu has made very full elaboration on the closed loop. I just have 2 points to add. First, the venues and the contracted hotels, they are just like the dots within the big closed loop, and the dots are connected by the dedicated transport services. And even for each venue, there are areas within the closed loop and areas outside the closed loop. So people in the closed loop, they can only stay in the areas within the closed loop, and people outside the closed loop may go to the dedicated areas of the venue outside the closed loop. So that is the general concept, and we have the designated flows for the movement of different groups of games participants, and we need to make sure that these flows do not cross with each other, so that is for the sake of COVID-19 prevention and control.
第2点呢，就是需要强调的是，我们实行的是严格的闭环管理政策。进入闭环的人员只能是在闭环里面各个点之间用专用的交通进行活动，是不能到环外的。我们会在闭环内给大家提供这个充分的工作这个条件和必要的生活条件。刚才我们黄先生已经介绍了，但是这个它是不能出闭环外的。
And the second is that the closed loop management is a very rigorous management, because people once enter the closed loop, they can only shuttle between the different dots, as so to speak, as I mentioned just now, by the dedicated vehicles, and they cannot go outside of the closed loop. But within the closed loop, we have the necessary conditions in place. We have sufficient working conditions, and we can also meet the daily necessities and the convenience of the life of the games participants.
你比如，和闭环外的人员走亲访友， 甚至和这个闭环外的人员呢进行聚会，这都是严格不允许的。
So meeting relatives or friends outside the closed loop, or even have a gathering or party, that is absolutely not allowed.
甚至到闭环外的商店购买东西，这也是不允许的。
And going shopping at the stores outside the closed loop is also forbidden.
出闭环的那3种情况，刚才黄先生已经做了介绍，所以我在这里也最后提醒，因为我们这是严格的闭环和社会面的分开。
So as for the 3 scenarios when one leaves the closed loop, just now Mr. Huang have made a very clear explanation. So our closed loop is strictly separated with the general public.
这个呢，我还想再有一点这个补充，就是但是在闭环内的这个都是媒体酒店，我想去看 Gabriel， 我们可以通过专用的交通，我去拜访老朋友，这个没有问题。
And I also wish to add that within the closed loop there are many contracted hotels for the media. So for example, both of us are in the closed loop and I wish to pay a visit to Mr. Gabriel, and that won't be a problem because we are both in the closed loop.
那么另外呢，就是可能对于好多记者，特别是体育记者来中国一次，08的时候，他们有很多美好的这个回忆，经常去这个三里屯喝酒，秀水街给这个自己的家人，特别是媳妇儿买点这个丝绸，其实这些呢我们也考虑，我们会在去这个环内呢，就是提供这些服务，就是提供啤酒就有2种，是吧？根据08的经验，我们最愿意喝的是这个青岛啤酒和这个燕京啤酒，我们现在这2种都有，这2种这个啤酒呢都是我们的赞助商，那另外呢我们还有咖啡，我们还有这个饭店的酒吧，这个然后呢这个大家的购物啊什么这些要求都可以满足，都可以满足。
And so for some of the journalists who have reported the Beijing 2008 Summer Olympic Games, they said the 2008 Games left them with fond memories. And for example, they want to go to the Sanlitun to drink with their friends, or they want to go to the Siushui market to buy silk for their families, particularly their wives. So for such needs, we will try our best to provide such services within the closed loop. For example, as for beer, we have 2 kinds of beer. Based on our experience from 2008, Qingtao beer and the Yanjing beer are most popular among the Games participants, and both companies are also the corporate sponsors of Beijing 2022. And also, coffee will be provided, and there are also bars in the hotels, and the shopping needs can also be met. So that is what I need to add.
简单一句话，奥运会从媒体的采访、竞赛到组织，一切都没有变。
And to put it simply, from media coverage to the Games participation and the organization of the Games, all things have remained unchanged.
只是防疫措施呢，像给我们这些所有的运行呢，就是穿了一件雨衣。
But just the COVID-19 prevention and control measures is just like a raincoat, so to speak, for us, for everything, for our games.
那么既保护我们所有的奥运会的参与者，也保护是吧？北京城还有这个河北是吧？还有将来大家坐高铁是吧？这个普通的我们说普通中国的民众，这样呢是一举两得的一个措施。
And so this umbrella or these measures is a very good protection for all the games participants and also for the residents of Beijing and Hebei and the general public of China, the Chinese people. And it's it is like killing two birds with one stone. It is, so to speak.
这个呢，当然穿雨衣是稍微有点不方便，是吧？但是呢，我们也像大家都知道，这个在奥运会赛场上，运动员经常说的一句话，“No pain, no gain”，是吧？可是我们这点 pain 呢是 very little pain， 但是我们这个 gain 呢，就是获得呢是一个巨大的，是吧？是可以保护每一个人的安全。那这一点呢，一定请大家呢，就是来配合。那么最后我想说的呢，你可以先翻这个。
So wearing a raincoat is not always a cozy thing, but just as many athletes would say, no pain, no gain. So this is only a very little pain for us, and actually the gain would be very enormous, and that would be the safety and health of all of us. And so we count on everyone to cooperate with us and follow the COVID-19 prevention and control protocols.
最后呢，我想让大家这个一定要把这一点写上。防疫措施不是黄先生一个人做的，是所有的6大客户群在一起开了13天会，是吧？我们也借鉴了日本的经验，就是在确保这6大客户群所有的基本的活动都能保证的情况下，首先是运动员，对吧？这个第二就是媒体，对吧？还有赞助商，还有 NOC， 啊，就是国际奥委会。然后国家奥委会，还有 RF， 就是 Individual Federation， 是吧？那么还有我们的 sponsors， 是吧？这次我们和日本不同，我们还有观众，所有的都是这些业务口的专家在一块儿开会，是吧？在确保运行的前提下，然后就是更科学、更精准的实施这个防御措施。因此这一次呢，严格说呢，就是我们经常说的，这是咱们出去说 ，it's a truly 是吧 closed loop， or it's a truly protection on both Olympic participants and the local people and the citizens。这个可能是大家，我希望大家都写了稿子，这可能是奥运会一个新的一个创举，也是大型赛事的一个新的创举。
And I do hope you can write into your report or make it clear in your report that such policies in the playbook was not developed by Mr. Huang Chun alone. It was actually developed jointly by both the IOC together with the 6 major client groups.
Stakeholders
with the 6 major stakeholders after more than a dozen days of meetings. So that is to ensure that all the games participants can fulfill their role while being protected against the COVID-19. And for example, for the athletes, for media, for the marketing partners, the NOC, NPCs, and IFs. And also different from Tokyo. And also that was based on the experience from the Tokyo. But different from Tokyo, we also have spectators this time. So all these policies are formulated by the experts of different fields, of different sectors, based on science and after meticulous consideration. So it is a true closed loop, truly closed loop, and it is truly a very good protection on both the games participants and the local Chinese people. It is actually a pioneering undertaking. So I do hope you can make it clear in your report.
Can I follow up to that question? My question with the same APs actually was about the journalists who live in Beijing and would go into the closed loop and the conditions for coming out of the closed loop and returning home after the games. You were saying that people would be subject to certain management depending on what situation they had been in. But are we able to find out what the range of possibilities are? Could it be that somebody who's inside the closed loop just returns home immediately after the games, return to their homes, or do they have to do 1 week of observation in a hotel, or do they have to do 21 days in a hotel before returning home?
我的问题就你刚才的介绍有一个追问，我大概的问题是跟美联社的记者差不多，就是说，如果是已经居住在北京的这个记者，他进了闭环，然后出闭环之后，像刚才黄春部长介绍的，取决于不同的情况，可能会有不同的这个健康的管理。那么我想问一下，就是这个有没有大概的一个范围？比如说，是不是从最松的范围来说，是不是能够立即出闭环就能立即回家，然后以及比如说是得在家里待1周，或者在隔离酒店待1周，还是说得隔离21天？就有没有大概一个这个范围是什么样的？
就跟我们的国内的工作人员和那个保障人员一样，在北京，他大多数是北京的一些服务保障人员，他一定都会有自己家。我想这个政策大家不用担心，我们中国的。保障人员、服务人员和是怎么做的，跟大家一定是一视同仁的，啊。但我们当然考虑最极端的情况下是21天，我想呢就是不会到那么长，啊。我当然具体的要经过我们的专家来分析研判之后来确定到底是在集中多长时间，或者居家多长时间，或者健康监测啊。在北京可能大家在北京市待的时间很长了，他有的是要集中隔离的。有的是要居家隔离的，有的是要居家健康监测的，还有普通健康监测的。我们根据不同的情况，它一定是风险的大小是对每个人都是一样的标准，所以大家就不用担心。具体你说我说多少天，是不是要直接就可以回到家里边？我们下一步的包括第2本防疫手册，才会有更详细的一些描述。希望大家我觉得不用担心。我们的国内的保障人员，就包括北京也有好几万人，还同样的。是吧？也得有这么一个过程，但是我们也是看，北京的当时的疫情的情况，或者就国内的疫情的情况来进行判断。我们希望就像现在这样，前一段疫情给控制好了，非常的平稳，我们的闭环内也没发生阳性的病例，那就很好。
So please rest assured, such policy are equally applicable to the Chinese workforce and support staff. So as for the range, so I can say the most extreme case would be a 21-day quarantine, but it has to be up to the analysis and assessment by experts based on the situation then, because one may be subject to the quarantine in designated places in their own home, or they may just be subject to health tracking in their own home, or just the normal type of health tracking. So no matter what, the same standards will be applied. And as for how many days, it will have to be confirmed for the next step. And also we will release the relevant information in the second version of the playbook. So please rest assured, because there are also several 10,000s of Chinese workforce and support staff. They will be subject to the same policy and same management. So we hope that, of course, the COVID-19 situation will be brought under very good control, and then just like not long ago, so that there will be no positive case within the closed loop, and the policy on that would be more convenient.
When would those decisions be made? Would they be made? Sounds like they're going to be made individually towards the end of the games.
那这个决定就是什么时候会做出？是刚才听你介绍，听着像是就是一个个的这样来，就是在比赛的过程中一个个的来确定，是这样吗？
我可以先做。Mr. Baker. That's why I asked the second question before our interview. Have you ever covered the Olympic game?
Yes, 7.
Yes, 7. Good, very good. So the situation is like that because I cover game based on basketball. I just want to set a summer game event and not a winter event. I don't want to do it and run any unlucky words to our events, right? So basketball game is from the very beginning. All the people entered into the basketball dorm, you see, this is no new cases. It's always is a healthy people from the one day until the last day. I think in this case, Mr. Huang and the group, the expert from IOC and from the RF, from the FIBA, okay, from the venue, and they say, well, people in this venue is the same because there's no new case. So maybe 3 days, 4 days, I don't know, because the expert will give it to that. So we are a little bit too early to talk about it. Tell me what that, tell me what that. I don't want to be a baby. You see, give me the candy. I want that. I want the chocolate. I don't want chocolate. I want. So just be a little bit patient, okay? Because all scientists work and they need a process to make every step very carefully. And that's why China lead the world in the prevention of the COVID. I couldn't imagine, you see, I read the news, I think everybody knows in Houston, one of Yao Ming's home teams, Houston Rocket. What happened there? What happened there last night? Can anyone tell me? What happened in Houston last night? You can check the news. You see. I don't want that happen in China. So your question is also my question. So you can enter into the NPC or the circle, any day you want. But I should end it there as the director of the media operation from the very beginning. That means January 4th. So I will stay there maybe for 40 days. I want to go home early. So please, it's our game. If you want to come here to cover the game, it's our game. That's so not individual. Baker, Mr. Baker, you can go home the first day. Big Xu, you can go home 2 weeks later. Not that case. It's venue by venue. I think it's from, yes, Mr. Huang will be the final, and not Mr. Huang even, and the group of scientists. Okay, well, it's not one of the person who gave the answers. Sorry, got too much. 我说中文嘛，你就不用你翻了。我刚才说的意思呢，就是说这个问题呢是大家都想知道的，但是这就是我在采访前我要问大家，你采访奥运会有这种经历吗？是吧？好，这个贝克先生他都采访过这个7届奥运会，我觉得太好了，是吧？假如我们用奥运会来做比例，假如我是一个篮球馆，我为什么要用篮球馆呢？我就是不希望就是我们在这儿说这个拿冬奥会做例子，是吧？因为冬奥会你说谁都不合适，我们不希望把这些不好的不吉利的话带给冬奥会，是吧？那么篮球馆如果从第1天一直到最后1天，没有任何的新增病例，大家都是健康的，是吧？所有进这个馆的人都是健康的，那么可能这个馆的人，那么作为采访篮球的记者，可能就会像黄先生刚才说了3种情况，可能会最早的离开这个闭环，但是是不是要3天观察还是4天观察？这个呢不是说我们现在坐在这儿就可以决定的，这一定是要由这科学家，也不是黄先生自己是吧？要由这国际奥会的科学家，要由中国的科学家，要由单项协会的这些防疫的这些专家，大家来一块儿来判断，它一定是一个 group of people 是吧？我也理解大家心情，叫我那我也会这么采访，我要坐在你们那边，我也会这么采访，是吧？这他绝对不是像小孩子说，我就要吃糖，我就要吃那个巧克力，我不吃那个三明治，是吧？这不是这么一个问题，是吧？这一定是大家要耐心的，因为这是我们大家的比赛，是吧？既然你来了到奥运会，奥运会一定是一个大家的比赛 ，Together for shared future， 一起向未来，是吧？所以呢，大家一定耐心等一等。我们还有第2个，但大家的这个问题呢，就是肯定是有建设意义的。我只是从一个奥运会参与者，但是最后的这个科学的这个答案呢，可能还是要由黄先生和未来的这个医疗专家来给大家做出，看看这样行不行？好吧？黄先生。
后有一个关于那个观众的问题，我们知道国内观众会参加的是我们对参加的安排不太清楚，你可以解释一下吗？
这个是这样，刚才我借用这个徐先生的一句话，关于观众呢，我们9月30日已经对外公布，不邀请境外观众参加这个观看奥运会。那么国内观众的情况，也刚才这个徐先生讲的一样的道理，希望大家耐心，我们要根据这个要有这个符合疫情防控要求的观众，才能够进入这个现场去观看比赛。但是我们也要根据这个疫情的情况，才能最后确定之后，我们的信息会及时向社会公布。所以也是和刚才徐先生所讲的一样，希望大家耐心，因为这个疫情防控的形势还并没有明朗，主要是这个原因。
And so, as for the spectators residing in China, the policy we actually released in December the 30th, that there won't be spectators from overseas, but there will be spectators residing in China, but such spectators will need to meet the requirements of COVID-19 prevention and control, and we'll also have to look into the COVID situation then when it is a little bit closer to the games, so that we can make we can clarify the policy. So once we have more information, then we will release them in due course. So we just hope our friends will just wait a little more with some patience. Thank
you. Before new questions, I would prefer Mr. Huang, the only expert here, talking about when we can leave the room and get home earlier. 我说先请黄先生讲一讲，因为这个大家都关心奥运会结束之后能不能早回家。
假如说刚才您提问那位先生，正好就是快要结束之前，你接触了一个阳性的病例，你假如说是一个密切接触者的这种情况，那恐怕就跟其他人要可闭环时间就要长一些。所以我们就说，一切都是由专业来判断。那我想在这块应该是明白理解的。在任何国家对阳性对它密接都有相对的一些防控措施。
And so I wish to add that, for example, one person was identified as a close contact just right before he or she was to leave the closed loop. Then that will be quite another story, because a close contact may have to be quarantined for a longer time. So that is another special situation. So all these will have to be decided based on the professional expertise and science. So we hope to have your understanding, because as you may know, many countries have very rigorous control measures on close contacts as well.
因为这种政策呢，也是我觉得就基于我们的一个大的环境，我就想多啰嗦两句，就是大家在中国，在北京经历了很多次的疫情从最早的就是去年刚开始的疫情，完了之后再逐渐的北京新发地的、顺义的、大兴的这次又发生这个城市层面的疫情。我们的中国政府，包括我们的北京市政府，对新冠疫情我们是采取零容忍的这么一个防控策略，就是要动态清零。
And so I wish to add more information. For the friends from the media who are already based in Beijing, you may have experienced many rounds of infections in China or in Beijing, beginning from last year, and for example from the Xinfadi outbreak, and to the Shunyi infection, to the cases in Daxing and the cases not long ago recently. So the Chinese government as well as the Beijing municipal government actually has a zero tolerance to such infection or cases. So we hope to keep such the number of cases zero dynamically. So once there are cases, we hope to cure the cases, and then so that the number will go back to zero.
所以基于这些防控的策略，所以我们中国包括北京市采取了，就是在跟全世界相比的话，我们采取的是最严格的防控措施。我想大家都有非常好的经历，尽管可能在疫情期间给大家生活带来了一些不便利，但是疫情之后，大家生活是非常自由的，包括我们的经济社会发展，这种抗疫的成果真是来之不易，其中呢也付出了巨大的人力、物力、财力，包括我们作为我们的中国公民，在中国的包括在座的各位都是做出了贡献的，来之不易。
And so that's why we have what seems more rigorous control measures than other countries or other places. But these measures have proven effective, although they may have brought some inconvenience to our life during each round of infection or outbreak. But after that, our life will just go back to normal, and actually these outcomes or results we achieve in epidemic prevention and control are hard-won. They are hard-won achievements, and actually a lot of human resources and materials and the materials were put in to control such cases for the sake of people's health. So everyone has pitched in, and everyone has made their contribution, including every one of you.
所以这次我们制定防疫手册是，实际上防疫手册刚才就徐先生讲的，是以国际奥委会是主导的。我们作为承办的国家，我们的城市，我们就是要充分的把我们中国的防疫政策要跟国际奥委会相关的利益相关方要讲清楚啊。中国是实行了一个很严格的措施，但是对于我们要确保赛事的顺利进行，这里边呢既要尊重中国的防疫政策。而且又要那个遵循我们国际奥委会、国际残奥会的赛事的规则，可能太严了，可能会影响到赛事的正常进行。同时还要兼顾到各个利益相关方的权益，所以我们从这个方面来制定的这么一个防疫政策。
And so the playbook, as Mr. Xu also mentioned, it was developed under the initiative of the IOC and the Beijing 2020. And Beijing, as the host city, we have taken full consideration of the Chinese prevention and control measures into account. So we during this process, we have explained the stakes to the different stakeholders. So to ensure the smooth and safe holding of the games, we need to respect and follow the COVID control measures. And so we also need to take into account the different factors. For example, if the rules are too strict, they may stand in the way of the functioning or operation of the games, and we need to also accommodate the rights and interests of the other different stakeholders. So the playbook was developed with based on the consideration of many factors.
所以我们在防控手册里就确定了几个核心要素，一个刚才就讲了的，一定要接种疫苗才能进入中国来华参赛。第二个呢，就是必须要进行闭环管理，就是刚才讲的很多了。第三个就是要坚持每天的核酸检测，这个是一个很重要的一个手段。它很早一看，大家可能在中国生活就是，只要哪个小区发生一例阳性，它都会全员进行核酸检测。他把这潜在的密切的接触的人员或者潜在的感染者，就第一时间就把他抓住之后把他控制起来。而且还有一个什么？早期发现病例的话，我们能控制很多病例的死亡。大家有没有关注中国的疫情？每次来的很多的疫情，很少有病例死亡的。所 所以我想呢，大家就快早期发现，能够早期主张病情的进展，而且能很好的控制那个病死率。
And so there are several core elements in the playbook. And first is vaccination, and the second is closed-loop management, which I have elaborated a lot just now. And the third would be daily nucleic acid testing. So those are very important ways for us to control COVID-19. For example, in China now, if there was one positive case detected in a community, then all people living in this community will need to take a nucleic acid testing so that all the potential close contacts or the potential cases can be confirmed as early as possible. And also through such approach, we can identify those close contacts or cases at a very early stage, and this can also greatly reduce the fertility rate. And so you may have noticed that there were some cases, but there were very few death cases. So that's also why we take very early action, very prompt action to reduce the fertility rate.
所以这个手册呢，就既体现了就是保证防疫安全的每个人的身体健康的这些比较好的一些措施体现了，但是我们又更考虑就是里边还得有一些比较好的服务人性化的一些服务，那就在严和就是服务方面，我们就是取得一个很好的一个平衡。既要保证安全，又要保证赛事各方面的一些运转，包括媒体的工作也不能受到任何的影响。
And so those measures are a very good protection on everybody, and we try to strike a very good balance between those rigorous pandemic control measures and good services with a human touch. So we will both ensure the safe hosting of the games and also ensure the normal functioning and operation of the games, and including the work of our media, which is very important.
所以呢，有了这本手册，我们希望所有的参加北京冬奥会的、残奥会的这些所有的参与者，包括我们国内的相关的工作人员，都要非常熟悉这里边防疫手册的相关的规则，还有包括国家奥委会的一些工作的流程，所以这里边都有很好的一些描述。熟悉之后，你才能自己去遵循，严格的履行个人的防疫的责任。我觉得这块是非常重要的。
So we count on every games participant and all members of the workforce to familiarize themselves with the rules in the playbook and the working procedures, the IOC-related working procedures in the playbook. So once they are familiarized with these contents, they will be able to respect and follow these protocols very well. So it is very important for our games.
通过我们这次的系列的国际测试赛的一个，就是也算一个实战的检验，所以我们从目前看起来的话，即使说有一些疫情或者一些苗头的东西，我们及时控制，并没有受到影响。包括我们大家可能关注的有阳性的病例或者有密切接触者，他是不是会第一时间就会送到医院去，是吧？可能我们有些境外的我们的一些外国朋友都非常就是不太愿意去医院出现阳性。但是我们也做了特殊的处理。今后像这种，只要你没有症状，病情没有什么变化，经现场专家判断，你可以不去医院，会单独给你找一个有隔离设施、服务良好的设施。包括密切接触者，你可以不离开你所住的酒店，可能有一些附条件的措施，你可能单人单间居住，单独就是给你送餐，或单独使用交通车辆。包括媒体，假如说是一个密切接触者，他也不会影响他相关的工作。所以这块呢，就是我们就是从各个为什么叫做每个人都要严格的遵守这个防疫的措施、防疫的那个个人防护的一些措施，能确保赛事能正常进行。所以希望每个人都要努力。
And so, for example, in the test events, we dealt with the certain potential certain potential infection in a very timely manner, so the test events were not affected, and also the positive cases and close contacts will be transferred to a hospital immediately. That was a general policy. But I know that many friends from overseas, they may not be very happy with this transfer directly to a hospital. So we also made some special arrangements. For example, for those asymptomatic cases, once they are assessed by the experts online, after such assessment and judgment, they will, some of them don't have to be transferred to a hospital, and they will only be transferred to a individual quarantine place or a particular space for quarantine, and but with some conditions attached. For some close contacts, they may also be able to continue to stay in their hotels, but they need to stay alone, and the meals will be delivered to them individually, and they have to take dedicated vehicles on their own. So, and also for the media, so we also ensure that the work of the media will not be affected in such case. And so that's why we count on everyone to strictly follow the COVID control protocols to ensure the proper functioning and smooth functioning of the games, and that requires the efforts of everyone.
最后再说，就是我特别就是相信，就是我们的手册经过测试赛的全面的检验，我们都是拿手册的测试赛都是按手册的那个防疫手册的要求来做测试赛工作。所以呢，经过我们不断的测试赛的最后的总结，就评估之后，把一些问题就不完善的地方，我们再纳入第二版的一些相关的内容。所以我想呢，就是对我们如期顺利、安全、成功的举办冬奥会，对我们来说我们还是充满信心。希望大家也都有信心。
And the test events are actually a dry run or a rehearsal of the games. So in the test event, we also tested the relevant practices in the playbook, and we'll continue to make stock taking and make evaluations. We will find where there are still problems arising, and we will refine those elements and protocols in the second version of the playbook. So we have every confidence that we will be able to deliver a safe games, a smooth games as scheduled. So I also hope our friends from the media will be as confident as us.
Thank you.
我们这一轮提问就是涵盖了我们7个媒体的9个问题，除了韦玲女士，她还有一个就是测试赛期间采访的情况。你是这个问题吗？
可以英文吗？Mr. Xu, well, thank you first of all for the explanation. You just suggested that it would be a good idea to split the news organization into 2 teams, one inside the closed loop, one outside the closed loop. We have heard a lot about the members inside the closed loop. Is it already possible to say anything about what the possibilities will be for media who stay outside of the closed loop, coming, for example, join spectators to experience the atmosphere? Are there hotels in Yanqing or Jiangjiakou where we could stay but close to the loop but not inside? I'm wondering what you can already share.
And to follow up on that, do we need to have loop accreditation as people outside the loop in order to go into these areas to do coverage, or will be there a separate process to the journalists who are going to be outside the bubble or the hard loop who will be covering?
那我想问许部长的一个问题，就是您刚才提到了，您建议我们就是媒体分成两支队伍，一支就是进入环内来专门跟踪赛事，那么一支可以在环外采访社会层面。那么我想问的就是说，刚才环内的我们已经说了很多，那就环外来说，比如说我们是否可以就作为观众来感受一下这个 报道这个赛事的这个氛围。那比如说在延庆张家口赛区这样的地方，我们能不能不进环，但住在离这个闭环很近的地方？那以及就是比如说，如果我们要这样做的话，注册方面是说需要跟这个进环内的记者有一样的注册流程，还是说会有另一套的注册的这个程序？
我知道大家都很关心这个事儿。徐先生刚才已经说了，注册媒体权限是国家委会最终确定。只有注册记者才能够进入闭环从事于这个冬奥会的这个体育报道。
And so I know this is a topic of a lot of interest to you, and just as Mr. Xu also said, only the accredited media outlets will be able to have access to, so the rights and access of the accredited media outlets are confirmed by the IOC or decided by the IOC, and only accredited media can enter the closed loop for the coverage of the Beijing 2022 Games.
至于你说的是不是能以观众身份进入场馆去观赛，这个刚才我也回应了，要看我们这个届时的观众的政策因为我们已经公布了要面向境内符合疫情防控相关要求的观众这是可以观赛，我们要看届时的观众政策。至于你说的这个参与报道以环外记者身份参观，这就是非注册媒体建设。据我了解，这个正在研究非注册媒体建设，相关的信息也很快会公布请你届时这个我们也可以直接联系，公布的时候我们也可以直接联系
And so as for the the policy for journalists outside the closed loop, as you mentioned, for example, as a spectator to report the games at the venue outside the closed loop, it will have to be up to the spectators' policy by then. So we have already released the policy that the spectators who meet the COVID-19 prevention and control requirements will be able to spectate the games. So that will be up to the further detailed policy on that. And so also the journalists outside the closed loop, they will be non-accredited media. So as far as I know, the building of the Center for Non-Accredited Media is being built, and so we will try to release the relevant information as soon as possible. And once we have that kind of information, we will keep you updated, and we can also directly approach you on that.
Just one word and Edmund? Yes, Edmund. So I covered the game since 1988, the Seoul game and every game, and usually each city should have a non-accredited media center. Now they call it the city media center, like the Tokyo, they call the Tokyo media center. I think all your requirements and can be met and satisfied in that center. I just asked Mr. Zhao just mentioned, and we are just working on it. But that belongs to the local government and say as the hospitality to medias and the state in the level of society and the community. But I just want to clear one thing is my suggestion is only as old Olympic as a sports writer. It's not as a BOGO of the city government's regulation. So if I were the editor, I would stay one or two people's outside the loop. And even without the pandemic, without the loop, I will also point it towards one or two people to cover the city because, it's China's Spring Festival during that time. it's a very good idea. It's just, but don't mention is the ball got cassette and should divide it. So, no, never like that.
Well, I think editorial things are right. And so what I'm curious about is just in terms of going into the main green, for example, during the Olympics and being able to film people going into the stadiums. Is that something we'll be able to
Because
do?
you got a big team using inside.
We do, but it's we're always interested where we're at.
Yeah, so that's why my suggestion is make close contact with your sports desk and the sports editor. 我刚才说的就是说，这个从88年汉城奥运会到现在呢，每一届城市都有一个非注册记者中心。现在呢，管叫城市中心，东京也有一个，大家都很熟悉。第二个呢，就是这个把这个报道队伍分成两半呢，不是组委会的这个规定，是吧？是完全作为一个老记者给大家的建议啊，这样呢能更好的报道社会层面，这个和北京市的这个对于奥运的气氛。特别是那时候是中国的春节，啊，另外呢就是这个报道一定是内外要结合，要跟你们的这个体育部和体育总监从现在起呢多交流一下。好。
谢谢大家部长翻译。好，诸位，我们已经超过将近半个小时了。还有一个问题吗？
啊，法新社的，不好意思，就是作为视频的话，我们就是很好奇，说到时候在闭环内，我们作为注册的视频媒体，非持权转播商，我们可能只有这个混采区能够拍摄，然后这一次的测试赛的混采区是视频连线嘛？那到时候的混采区，我们是不是能拍到真正的运动员本人跟他采访？然后那个我看到您的 playbook 里面也有一句是写，就是如果到时候混采区的人太多的话，会采取措施干预，那会不会出现那种就是临时取消混采啊这种情况？对，谢谢。丁立南。丁立南。对。
你用翻译是吗？
是说中文还是说英文？
没关系。
这个首先我翻译。
From AFP, my question is that the AFP is a video media and it is a non-rights holding broadcaster for the Beijing 2022 Games. So we will only be able to report and cover in the mixed zones. So for the recent test events, we are only able to to film the screening, to have the screening of image through a video link. And so I wonder if this will also be the case for the Beijing 2022 Games, or we will be able to meet the athletes and interview them in person. And also I noticed that in the playbook there is a mentioning that if there are too many people in the mixed zone, by then there will be certain interventions. So I wonder, does such interventions include a sudden cancelling of a interview opportunity in the mixed zone?
那个好，我是从后头往前说，混合区永远不会取消。这是全世界媒体来采访奥运会的一个最大的一个动力，是吧？也是最大的一个新闻的一个源泉啊。那么而且呢，现在很多的新闻都是在混合区的那种赛后的直接的情感的爆发，这个交流，我们认为它是奥运会媒体报道中最珍贵的一环，永远不会取消。那么第二呢，就是现在这次对。
So I will first answer the question about the mixed zones. So the interviews in the mixed zones will never be cancelled because we understand it is the biggest driving force or encouragement for the media to during the games, and it is also the biggest source of news during the games time. So it is a very good opportunity of for example, an outburst of emotions or communication or exchange of ideas. So we believe it is the most precious moment. Those are the most precious moments. So the interviews of the mixed zones will never be cancelled.
第二个呢，就是刚才说的，就是这次测试赛大家看到的这个视频采访，主要还是防疫的要求。赛时呢，我们会把它作为一个这个后卫的一个手段。
And so as for the the interview via a video link you mentioned during the test events, it is mainly to meet the requirements of COVID-19 prevention and control. But for the games time, we will use this only as a backup plan.
我补充一下啊，这次测试赛呢，组织媒体记者采访，主要是在环外进行采访，因为我们的主媒体中心还没有用，所以这次记者的采访全是在环外进行采访。到赛时注册媒体是要在环内进行采访。
And so I wish to add a point that for these test events, because the media mainly conduct their interview outside the closed loop, because our main media center, MMC, is not completely up and running and hasn't opened to the media yet. So that's why that was the case for the test events. But during the games time of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, the MMC will be open to the media, so that will be another case. So that will be interviews within the closed loop.
那么第一个问题呢，就是说，在这个手册里已经写得非常清楚，就是在目前所有的混合区呢，在奥运会期间，一定是大家是面对面的采访，是吧？但是呢，要和运动员隔2米，和其他的记者呢隔1米，这都在手册里写得非常非常清楚。我直接说哈。Was so far as for the Olympic Games media operation, for the mixed zone, I just mentioned as the biggest attraction for media and the most emotions areas for athletes to exchange their feeling and ideas of the game and the competition will be remained as normal. So all the media, accredited media, can interview all the athletes in person. Okay. Only in the unexpected situations, and not only the too much high demanding people, but too much people crowded over there, and so in that case we will use the video as a backup, and also we can also see the video and from the OBS, it's a live broadcasting on OCA TV. So that's very convenient for all the media. And for example, if you work in the media press workroom, you can just write your story and watch the big screen and listen the interview and put the quotes into your stories. Okay. 我刚才跟你说了呢，就是说实际上大家都是能够这个面对面采访，只是要保持2米，保持这个1米这个规矩。那么另外呢，实际上呢，在这高需求赛事的时候呢，大家也可以通过这个视频采访呢，就是在自己的工作间可以看到和听到这个采访，这样呢可以直接把运动员的这个引语呢写到自己的稿子里。那么最后一条呢，我想说呢，就是 ENR 的政策呢，就是这次北京奥运会有很多的 ENR， 这个日本也有很多的 ENR。现在国际奥委会呢正在做这个 assess rules for ENR。就是during the Beijing Olympic Games， 就是在北京奥运会期间，请大家关注，这个很快会发布。因为严格说呢，在 ENR 呢，在赛场内，包括混合区的一些地方是没有权利拍摄的，因为拍摄的权利呢，只是归这个 OBS， 这是一个非常非常专业的一个问题，是吧？This is a very very professional issues because the IOC media operation department, they are just making the assess role for ENR, because in the past the ENR has no right to shoot this in the FOP in the Olympic venue, and even in some of the mixed zone, because the mixed zone always belongs to the broadcasters. They paid huge money for it. They paid the money for the right for it. 但是呢，这些呢都会很快做出这个相应的规定。But all this will make the very clear regulations and rules for ENR, because in Beijing we have a lot of ENR. And our press chief, Mr. Chen Yue, from Xinhua, and he's very experienced and had meeting with the ENR in Beijing, I think, for several meetings. 我们的这个媒体总监陈悦先生呢非常有经验，他们也跟驻京的这些EN啊，是吧？这个非持权转播商进行了好几次会议啊，我想呢一定会做出一个非常明确的和方便的这个规定，让大家呢就是更好的采访。
好的，诸位，我们已经太阳要落山了，我们已经拖了很长时间。
夕阳下面，
希望你们不要错过窗外的美景。虽然我们那个房间讨论很热烈，我们希望下次还有机会再进一步沟通交流。然后对，
看看窗外的美景，
用一点时间，我们取外景。再次感谢各位部长的到来，感谢各位媒体的到来，我们下次见，多谢。
感谢各位媒体。其实我们现在是在昼夜加班，就是大家平均的下班时间都是在晚上8点半到9点。这个，所以好多东西需要我们这个在赛前呢明确。如果东京奥运会在去年举行，那么我们今年。